There's other baits that I throw a lot, but these literally are on my deck from April when there's any fish post-spawn to July when they're in that post-spawn mood. So I don't know what my slides say. Let me switch to the next one. All right, there they are. So my top 5 baits, number 1, this is not necessarily in order, but my 4 shallow baits are a buzz bait, a wacky worm, some version of pitching bait, which I'll break down in a minute, a big topwater, like a big walking bait, and then my 1 offshore rod. Like I said, I have others, but my 1 that I always have tied on is a worm on a big shaky head, just because it's a good search bait out deep. And that's my 5 baits, and I'm going to break down each bait, how I set it up, and when I go with that bait rather than another one. So my number 1, I know I sound like a broken record. I think I've done 6 of these seminars or something. I'm pretty sure I've talked about a buzz bait in all 6 of them. I think I even did some videos on the water on a buzz bait. But it's me and a buzz bait. It's close to my heart. I made a lot of money on it. I love it. The buzz bait I throw, I'll kind of break down the bait first and then when I throw it. So the buzz bait I throw, used to I threw a skirted buzz bait a lot, but now I pretty much throw, I would say 9 out of 10 times if I've got a buzz bait tied on, it is when you're targeting a mayfly hatch, it generally happens on any bushes, docks sometimes, but usually overhanging trees on the lake. You just kind of run around, look for something casting shade for the fish to hide in with the mayflies hatching in it. And the shad spawn or bait fish spawn, it varies around the country, but shad spawn's a great time for the buzz bait. Shad usually are visibly spawning, like you can see them spawning up. They spawn in shallow water, spawn on rocks, docks, laydowns. They'll literally spawn on anything. Shad spawn's a little hard to pinpoint because they will spawn on anything in the water. Vegetation is real common, whether it's submergent, like vegetation, or emergent, where you can see it on top, whether it being gator grass or lily pads, something like that. And a buzz bait is a great way to target those, because if you ever seen a shad spawning on a lily pad or on a dock pole or on something, they get on top and they kind of flap around. It looks just like a buzz bait blade. And that's one of my favorite ways to target those is a buzz bait, because you can cover water fast and it looks very similar to those shad spawning. And I know it does because when you reel your buzz bait through a shad spawn, they'll actually bounce off the blades, bounce off the body, because they think it's one of their fellow shad. And it's a great fast way to cover water doing that. So that's kind of my buzz bait technique. And the horny toad, I really feel like helps you put that bait in these areas, because like the shad spawns are usually more open water, but especially the brim beds and mayflies, you're generally putting your bait in hard to reach shady areas. Even if that's not specifically where the bluegills are, that's where the bass are usually going to hang out. So the horny toad allows you to skip that bait and get it up in those effective areas. So we'll move on to the next bait now. We are going to talk a wacky worm. So a wacky worm is something I really have tied on almost all the time, other than when it's really, really cold. But in the post-spawn, wacky worm is probably one of the best baits for targeting fish on anywhere in the country. The buzz bait and some of those other baits, they do work most places, but a wacky worm works literally everywhere. I don't think there's a single person watching right now that's never caught a fish on a wacky worm. So the wacky worm I use, I like a Zoom fluke stick, green pumpkin. It really, the color on your fluke stick is, I would say I always start with green pumpkin. Sometimes I use flakes in it. I'm not a big believer in the little flakes make that much of a difference. So that one, I know at Hartwell, I think that's the color I won Hartwell on, but I was throwing green pumpkin the whole time and I caught like 150 fish and ran out of them, and then I started throwing that color. So I'm not big on the flakes. So just a green variety. A blueberry is what I call it. It's like black with blue flakes. I use that wacky worm color a lot on some of those tannic waters in Florida or wherever the water, Santee, anywhere that you got that darker water. Sometimes just a black and blue, black blue flake is more effective. And then also I will generally have a shad pattern wacky worm on if I'm targeting a shad spawn or something like that, if there's fish up feeding on shad.
And the information Bass University provides isn't your basic run-of-the-mill fishing video. This is specific information from A to Z to help you learn, get to the water, and become a better angler quickly.